Boatworks today is sponsored by Totalboat and Alexial Yacht Coatings, as well as supported by the generosity from the beautiful folks over on Patreon. Thank you so much. So welcome back, everybody. I hope you are all having a wonderful weekend. My name is Andy with Boatworks today. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at a one-part paint that I've been getting an awful lot of questions about that I haven't been able to answer because I haven't had any hands-on time with it. I'm also going to fill you in on what's been going on with the Bertram and give you a little bit of an announcement for what's going to be going on for next week. So with that said, let's just get started. So over the past few months, I've been working with a lot of people helping them with their own projects. And eventually, especially when you're talking about larger projects, eventually the conversation switches over to, well, how are you going to finish this? Do you want to finish with paint or you want to finish with gel coat? Now, I've already kind of covered my opinion on where I stand on this. If you haven't seen that video, I'll include a link for that down below in the description. But generally speaking, especially on larger projects, what I try and do is steer people towards using a good quality two-part paint. Now, as you know, Alexial is essentially my go-to. It's what I'm going to be using on the Bertram, and honestly, it's the only paint that I found that can figuratively basically run circles around All Grip or Interlux or any of the other major brands. It's the best paint that I've found. Now, with that said, I fully understand that not every project has the budget for two-part paint. I mean, I get it, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I mean, to be honest, I've used some one-part paints that actually gave me better results than some of the two parts that I was using at that time. So you can get excellent results with a one-part. It certainly has its place, but I mean, at the end of the day, what you're looking to do is basically do the best you can with what you have. I mean, it's about spending time on the water and making memories. I mean, that's what has been my motto ever since day one that I started this channel. Now, I will be the first to admit that I don't have, or at least what I consider to be, a ton of experience with one-part paints. I mean, I've used them in the past. Primarily, it's been the Petit Easy Epoxy and Interlux Brightside. But more recently, the paint that I've been getting a lot of questions about has been the Wet Edge by Totalboat. Now, I've not used this. I mean, the can is still sealed. It's never been opened. I've never used this. So I figured, well, a lot of people are asking about it. I've never used it. Let's just take a swing at it for the first time on camera and kind of see where it goes. I mean, what's the absolute worst that could go wrong, right? But I will say, if the quality of this paint is on par with any of the other products that Totalboat makes, they've set the bar pretty high. And I've got some pretty high hopes for this, but time will tell. We shall see. But first things first, I need to get this panel prepped so we can get some paint laid down. Now, generally speaking, when you're getting ready to paint, the first thing you're going to put down is going to be some primer. Now, for this demonstration, I'm not going to do that because I want to see what kind of coverage I get off the first and the second coats of this wet edge. Now, as long as we're talking about primers, just real briefly here, primer generally comes in two different colors. You have a white and then a gray. Now, if you're going to be painting, as your finished top coats, if you're going to be painting with a light colored paint, then you're going to be wanting to use the white primer. Now, if you're going to be going over top of that with say like a dark color, like a dark blue, red, along those lines, just a dark color, that's where you're going to want to use your gray primers. Now, before we start getting anything mixed up, real briefly, I want to go over the materials I'm going to be using here. Now, the most important aspect whenever you're going to be rolling out and tipping, obviously, is going to be the roller. Now, rollers, I have fought endlessly on trying to find the right one. Either the nap was too thick and it laid the paint down too heavy and you got sags, nothing you could do about it. Once the material is down, you're pretty much hosed. Or the nap was too thin, something like you'd find in a foam roller, and it didn't lay down enough material for the paint itself to actually be able to flow out. It just kind of stayed very stippled. So the rollers that I've been using for about the past year, they're actually made by Red Tree, and they're these little 4-inch mohair mini rollers. And if you're interested in these rollers, again, I'll have links for all these down below in the description. But basically, these rollers hit that happy medium for me. The nap wasn't so thick that it allowed the paint to run, but it laid it down thick enough to where it actually allowed the paint to flow out. So it's kind of like that happy, perfect medium here. The nap on these is about 1/8 of an inch, so about perfect. So for the sake of saving face with the YouTube overlords here, I'm not going to name the actual company or the brand of this brush, but I will say it's right here. And the actual line of this brush is called their Heritage brush, and it's their 3-inch model made by one of your favorite adult beverage companies. So as far as how I'm going to prep this panel, this is actually going to be a 3-step process. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to wipe this down with a good, de-waxer cleaner here. And then I'll sand with 320, and then I'm going to clean it again. Now the reason I don't want to skip that first cleaning is because I don't know exactly what's on the surface. Well, no, actually I do, but in most cases you don't. So just in case, I want to make sure that there aren't any surface contaminants on here that I would then be coming back over top with the sandpaper and really driving into the surface of this panel. And then I'm going to clean it again, and at that point we should be pretty well set to start mixing up some paint. Now I am not going to need very much of this paint at all, but I do need to pour out enough on here so I can tell how much reducer I need to put in, or how much I've actually put in. Now generally speaking, in instructions for paint, they say, you know, thin 5 to 10%. At least that's what it says for the wet edge here. When I know I'm going to be rolling, and specifically rolling and tipping something on, I always go up to the maximum of what they recommend for reducing. So I'm going to thin this up to a full 10% using their brushing thinner 100 here, or 100 brushing thinner. What do they call it? Special brushing thinner 100. And the color on this is Bristol Cream. So I'm going to try and basically pour out about 4 ounces through a strainer. You know, anytime you're coming from a can into what's going to be your finished mixing cup, always go through a strainer. So 10% of 4 ounces, I don't know. I don't have a measuring cup that's going to be quite that fine. So I am just going to add a little bit of a splash here, and then I'll test the viscosity here with the mixing stick. That's a little thin for my taste. Not much, it's pretty close. I generally try to see if I can get to like a 5 or a 6 count before it starts dripping, then that'll tell me I'm about right where I want to be. That's about a 3 count. Okay. Yeah, just a touch more of the paint then. 1002, 1003, 1004. There was a 5,000 or 5. There was a 5 count. Okay, so I'm going to call that good. This is just a belt and suspenders trick to make sure that you get all the, if there is any loose lint on here, there shouldn't be, but sometimes there is. But if you go over it with some tape once or twice, that should pull any little loose bits off of here so it doesn't flow off into your paint. Now, as soon as I finished mixing up the paint, I brought it over here and I put a paper towel over top. So basically, whenever you're not actually pouring something in or out of this cup, you want to have it capped, because that's just going to slow down how fast the solvent is able to evaporate. And I'll touch a little bit more on here as I actually start rolling this out. But so the paint is mixed up, the surface has been de-waxed and cleaned, so I want to make sure that I do not touch it with my bare hands. And then right before I paint, or before I roll anything out, I'm going to go over top of this with a tack rag. Now I already know that there's going to be quite a bit of dust that's going to float in here, because this building, well, right now it's not very clean. I haven't gone through my prepping process or cleaning process prior to painting, and typically that takes almost a week, especially given the type of work that I do in here. So I am fully expecting there to be a fair amount of dust that floats in here over the next hour or so, or half hour, but not much I can do about that one. So when I'm pouring out the paint here, I only want to pour out what I'm going to be able to use within a 5 to 10 minute window. And then as soon as I pour that out, cap it, put a lid on it so that the solvent isn't able to evaporate quite as quickly here. Now, I'm not going to have to come back and redo another pour into here because this is such a small panel, but if you're doing a larger area, say like your hull, you're going to end up doing probably 3 or 4 extra pours in here, again, pouring out only what you're going to be able to use within 5 to 10 minutes. Now, after 3 or 4 times of just kind of refilling the tray here a little bit, you're going to want to give the bucket of paint itself a little bit splash of a little bit extra thinner, just to kind of account for what's already evaporated. So 3 or 4 times of dipping into the wishing well, throw a little splash of additional thinner in there, give it a good stir, and then recap it, and then you should be able to maintain a pretty consistent flow with the paint over the course of a larger area here. Now when I'm loading up my roller here, I want to load it up, but then I want to roll off as much as I can until I get a better feel for how much distance I'm actually going to get off of this one application of paint here from this roller. So I want to roll out almost pretty much as much as I can. And then I'm going to start in the middle of an area. I don't want to necessarily start on an edge. On either edge, I'm going to start right in the middle and kind of work my way out this way. And the key to paint, whether it's this paint, All-Grip, Alexial, whatever it may happen to be, but the key to paint when you're rolling it out is these coats need to be paper thin, and you do not want to overwork them. You want to roll it out thick enough, to where you're actually getting full coverage. You can see I'm not getting any white, bleeding through here, through the color of this paint. But it's not so much that it's actually going to start to run and sag on me. And even still here, I've got a little bit too much. So try and get more paint off of this roller. And just real quick, I'm going to come back and do some light rolls. And that's it. At this point, I'm going to leave it. I don't want to work this paint any more than I have to, because the more you work it, the more you roll it or do it, brush it, whatever, the more you work this paint, the faster that solvent is going to flash off. You want the solvent to stay in there so that this paint has a chance to kind of level and flow and flow out. I'm going to walk away and call this one done for the night. Now I'm already seeing dust starting to settle in here, but as I mentioned earlier, there really isn't a whole lot I can do about that one. So I guess it is what it is. So I'm going to leave this be for the night, and I will see you guys again in the morning. So a bit of time has passed, and after just rolling this out, it flowed and leveled awesome. I mean, this looks, granted it is just one coat, but this looks very, very nice. I mean, there is some dust in here, and we knew that was going to happen going into it, but overall, I got to say it looks pretty nice. Now, one thing that I did find a little bit surprising is that after just one coat, I did get full coverage, meaning down here in the corner, I don't see any of the white from the background shining through. So one coat of this beige gave me full coverage. And for only having one coat, I'd say this looks pretty good, but a second coat is definitely needed. And also, I had to let this paint set up for 2 days. And that's strictly because of the temperatures I keep the shop in. Right now, it's springtime. I pretty much have the furnace off. So it's getting a little cool in here. It's about 60, 65 degrees, which is a little bit cool for this paint, well, for one-part paints in general. Now, they do make a cold cure version of this, which I don't have, which probably would have been a little bit more appropriate. But that's still fine. This will eventually do its thing. It'll eventually flash off and set up, and well, here just like it did here. But it took 2 days. It was still a little bit tender. I wasn't able to sand it just after 24 hours. So it's had 2 full days, and right now it's pretty good. It's still tender, but it's still able to be sanded right now. So right now, I'm going to grab some 400 grit paper. I'm going to sand this down, not very thoroughly. I'm going to do this sanding by hand because this is an uneven surface. I don't want to sand through in any spots. I just want to scuff the surface so that I can get some decent adhesion on here. Give it another wipe down with the surface cleaner and mix up some paint. And then we're going to roll this second coat out. Now this one I'm actually going to roll and then tip, just to kind of see how it behaves. Now, generally speaking, I like to do 3 coats whenever you're working with a one-part paint. And when it comes to do that third coat, what I usually do is, whichever method worked better, whether it was just rolling or rolling and tipping, whatever method worked best, that's what I'm going to do for the third coat. Because it's your third coat, that's going to be your show coat. That's what you want to have, the most smooth texture on there. So, actually, you don't want to have any texture at all, but I think you know what I'm saying. Now when I'm making my strokes here, I'm going to be using very, very light pressure. Essentially just the weight of the brush, and I'm just going to gently tip it off, and then I'm going to walk away. Again, you don't want to overwork this with the roller or with the brush. And that's it. So right now I'm just going to walk away, let this paint do what it's designed to do, and we'll check back after it lays down. And just to give you a little peek as to how it looks, I'll admit right now it looks awfully rough. I'm actually wondering if this is going to be another one of those paints that you get a better application just by rolling it out rather than by rolling and then tipping. And we'll see. When I rolled it out last time, that looked a little rough as well. But it flowed out beautifully. So we'll give this some time, see what happens. So for the time being, I'm going to leave this sit for a few days, just to kind of, let the paint tighten up a little bit. Now, again, because this is a one-part paint and it's so cool in this shop, it's going to take a little bit longer than it would if you were, say, in a much warmer climate. But for right now, in this area, 60, 65 degrees, it's going to take some time for it to do its thing. Now, that's going to be pretty much the case for any one-part paint, not just specific to the wet edge, but it's going to be the same thing for the Petta Easy Epoxy, the Interlux Bright Side, any one-part paint. It has to rely on evaporation for the solvents to kind of work their way out of the paint, and then for the paint itself to kind of start to kind of air cure. Now, that's a much different scenario than when you're talking about with a two-part paint, which is it's a chemical cure, much like epoxy. And that's pretty much the reason why two-part paints are going to be a much, much harder surface than really any one-part paint on the market. So with that, I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about the elephant in the room, which is a question I've been getting quite a bit over the past few weeks, which is what's going on with the Bertram? Why aren't you making any progress? Did you give up on the transom? Did you give up on the project? And the answer is no, not at all. Actually, far from it. In beginning this video, I had mentioned that I'd been spending a lot of time working with folks, helping them with their own projects, and that's a perk that I offer over through Patreon. And what's kind of, well, I think it's kind of funny, but when you look back, kind of the time that all of this started happening, that's when I guess progress with the Bertram started to kind of slow down a little bit. And I don't know, like I said, I find a little bit of humor in this. You gotta try, find some humor where you can. But basically, the best I can understand is that, with everybody pretty much stuck at home, after a couple days, you start to run out of things to do. So you start thinking, well, that's right. There was this project or whatever the task that I wanted to get done on the boat. Now's just as good a time as any, right? So a lot of people seem to have that same thought kind of all at once. And that's pretty much what I've been doing for the past few weeks, just trying to help folks with their projects, doing consultations to the tune of about eight or nine hours a day. And I haven't had any time to make any sizable progress or really any time at all, whatever on the Bertram. Now, don't get me wrong, I want to make this very clear. I am not complaining at all. I mean, far from it, to be honest. My goal with this channel ever since day one has always been to help others with their projects and to show them how to do certain, step-by-step, I guess, tutorials, whatever you want to call them, and, kind of highlight products that I have found worked. And to be perfectly honest, with the folks over on Patreon being such a large, I guess, part of what makes this channel sustainable, they are a priority for me. I want to make sure that I'm taking care of I want to make sure that I'm taking care of them. They're helping me. I want to make sure that I'm helping them, and I'm going to continue to do so. Now, that said, I am still going to continue to put out weekly content. The topics themselves may be a little bit scattered, until things kind of settle down a little bit. But hopefully, what I'm able to put together, at least for the next few weeks, again, until things kind of settle down, it's still going to be helpful, relevant information, specifically going to be focusing on, kind of these pre-launch tips and tricks, again, trying to show you little tips and tricks on how to get your boat ready and looking its best come springtime. And in the meantime, when I have chances to, break away and get some progress done on the Bertram, specifically chipping out the transom and all that, I'm going to record all that. Now, what I'm probably going to end up having to do is, kind of record little chunks, here and there, and then I'm going to bank all that content up so that when I get enough, I guess, progress put together to actually do just a full-blown Bertram video, that's when that's going to be coming out. But until then, for the most part, I think for the next foreseeable short-term future, I'm hoping this is all going to be done and kind of sorted over here within the next couple of weeks, but we shall see. But until then, like I said, I'm still going to continue to put together weekly content, which is hopefully going to help you get your boat ready for spring. And before I close this out, the last announcement I want to make is that with spring finally here hitting Wisconsin, I am going to be taking next week off to take care of things that have been kind of kicked to the side, to the back burner for quite a while. Some things much longer than others, but either way, everything has kind of come to a head. The weather's going to be beautiful. We got a good weather window over this next week. So I'm going to be taking that time to knock a bunch of stuff out, get caught up on other things, and basically just get ready for summer. So with that said, the next video will be coming out on May 17th, and actually a little bit earlier for the folks over on Patreon. So until then, I hope you found this video helpful, and as always, I want to thank you for your time. Thanks for watching. Stay healthy, and I'll see you then.
This has been a Boatworks Today production.